Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. It is my distinct pleasure to welcome you to the first open forum for the position of Chancellor for North Orange County Community College District. Let me explain the format for today's forum. In the next couple of minutes, I will introduce Dr. Cheryl Marshall to you and invite her for her opening statement. I do have two structured questions for Marshall once her opening statement is done. The whole process I expect to take about 15 minutes or so. Thereafter, we would have about half an hour, to be precise, 27 minutes. So I have a question-answer session with the audience. Once that is done, then we would allow 2 minutes for Dr. Marshall to make a closing remarks. The forum will be streamed live, so those of you, of course, you are in attendance here, but if you cannot attend all the forums, you can always catch them live or catch them later on. It will be available on our website. And the Board of Trustees would like to have your comments from this forum. You can leave your comments on the NOCCCD.edu website. Once you go to the home page, the instructions are self-explanatory. You would see the button for the comments. Click on that and please leave your comments. Your comments are expected to be there before 8 o'clock this evening so that the Board of Trustees can take a look at that before they meet with the candidates again tomorrow morning. So please make sure you remember the timeline, 8 o'clock this evening, NOCCCD.edu website, and follow the instructions there. Dr. Cheryl Marshall has served as the president of Crafton Hills College in Ukiah, California since 2012. She previously served as the college's vice president of instruction. Dr. Marshall earned a doctorate degree in education from the University of Southern California and a master's degree in industrial and organizational psychology from California State University, San Bernardino. Ladies and gentlemen, Dr. Cheryl Marshall. Dr. Marshall, please tell us about yourself and what attracts you to the position of Chancellor of North Orange County Community College District.
Good morning. Thank you for taking the time to be here today. I appreciate you taking time out of your schedule. I'd like to start by telling you how much I love being an educator. I can't imagine doing anything else with my career, so I wanted you to know how much I enjoy this chosen profession because I think we make a huge difference in the world. Early in my career, I started as a trainer and organizational development consultant, so I did a lot of team building, strategic planning, facilitation of group decision making, and I never knew how valuable those skills would be as I've continued in my path and my career and the community colleges. And then when I started at Mount SAC, 16 years ago, I believe, I worked on an economic development grant and served business and industry and did customized training and customized performance consulting to help educate the business community. So I have a full understanding of the need for the rapid response training and education we do as community colleges. It's a very important function of how we serve our communities. And then I eventually moved into the credit side of the house, so I understand the credit side of the house as well in traditional classroom training. And I think that's one of the things that makes community colleges special, is that we have a full range of programs and services that meet community needs, business and industry needs, traditional credit students, non-traditional students, and I think that makes us very special and unique in the role as public educators in California. Most recently, I've had great opportunities to be an educational leader, starting as Vice President of Instruction at Crafton and then moving into the President role. And for the last 3 years, I've served as a representative for the Inland Empire on the CEO board up at the state level. So that's done several things for me. It's given me a very great and broad view of the issues that affect our entire system, our community college system. It's connected me with wonderful colleagues that help provide best practices and we solve problems together. And in the Inland Empire, we've worked as a region to collaborate, and we've developed a workforce development plan that identified 8 high-demand occupational areas that we wanted to collaborate on. So it's been wonderful to work within the region and to work together to serve our communities. This work over the last few years is one of the reasons that I would like to be your Chancellor. I really enjoy the regional work. You might have heard the term collective impact. It came out in 2012 from a guy named Kanye. And the idea behind it is that when we're addressing major issues such as the education gap, achievement gaps, poverty, racism, All of the kinds of things that I know that we want to effectively deal with and solve in our communities. When you get the community college people together within the district and then work with our external partners, our K-12 partners, our four-year partners, our business partners, our community-based organizations, communities that are doing this are seeing tremendous results in terms of reducing the achievement gap, helping people continue along their educational path, and they have even seen things like a decrease in the crime rate and a decrease in hate crimes, those kinds of things. So I love this kind of work, and I think being a chancellor will give me an opportunity to work regionally within the North Orange service area to develop that kind of approach. The other reason I'd like to be your chancellor is that it's very obvious in this district that you have a commitment to student success. You're focused on student success and equity and doing something about that. And your spirit of innovation, the fact that you've been able to implement and apply best practices to help students succeed, those are the kinds of things that I would like to be a part of, that are dear to my heart, and that I would love to come and lead and be a part of.
Thank you, Dr. Marshall. Now I have two structured questions, each approximately about 4 minutes or so. Please explain how you would promote a sense of community and trust in this culturally diverse institution and community.
I think first and foremost is honesty. I'm an open and transparent person. That has worked well for me. I believe in sharing information. This is where my strategic planning comes in. I love having a unified plan that brings different groups together, would bring the different entities across the district together. If we have clear goals and you have a very clear district strategic plan, that's what creates unity and creates a common direction for us to head as educators and community. And then in terms of style and in dealing across the district, I think sharing information, being visible, being accessible, talking to folks out in the district, and then working together. Not just words, but actually achieving things and working on projects and student success efforts that pay off and that make a difference for our community. I think that's the way that we establish a sense of oneness, of unity. Doesn't mean that we don't have distinct identities at each campus, but that's how we get headed in the same direction. We find out the things that we commonly care about, and then we actually work on those and achieve results.
Thank you for the response. The second question is, describe one or two professional experiences or activities through which you provided leadership for improving systems or outcomes at a college or district level.
One of the things that I'm proudest of is when I became Vice President of Instruction at Crafton, about a year after that, we were placed on probation, accreditation probation, and it had to do with our lack of integrated planning, our slow progress on student learning outcomes, and some sort of governance issues, some collegial consultation issues. Within a 2-year period, we were able to get off of probation. And what that took was building an infrastructure. We had to build a good planning structure, a good committee structure. There had to be open communication. As the ALO, it was my responsibility to paint the picture of the vision of where we were going and then provide progress checks along the way. How far have we gotten? What have we accomplished? And that was part of how we were able to get off of sanction within a 2-year period. It also built a system. It built an infrastructure and provided a foundation for much of the work that we do. So it allowed us to not only have clear, open communication and shared decision-making across the campus, but then it allowed us to put our energies into serving students. And we've done things through our HSI grants that have established a great infrastructure for student success, things like a transfer center that we hadn't had before, learning communities, supplemental instruction, cohort-based programs such as our STEM Academy. All of those are types of things that we did along the way to get refocused on serving students and doing our true work. But it was a great, I think it provided a really true solid foundation for us to work on.
At this point of time, I would open up the floor for the questions from the audience. If you have any specific question for Dr. Marshall? Yes, please.
Yes, I have several questions I've written down, and perhaps you can listen to them.
Sure. The 2 questions. read out the question before I can read this also. In order to prepare for this Chancellor selection process, what have you done by way of research of the individual board members?
Thank you. I've looked at the bios for each one of you. I've looked at what your interests are. I've looked at the goals that you set legislatively. I understand that President Dunchief was part of the Student Success Task Force, and I believe that that's part of why you have a commitment to student success. So that's the research that I've done so far, is understanding what, also which region or area of the service of the district that you serve, and what's important to you. Second question is, based on that research, what do you want to tell the board members about yourself in order to earn their confidence and be a successful chancellor? First thing I want to say to the board members is that I understand that I work for you, that I'm your only employee, and that I need to be a facilitator and a liaison between the goals that you set as a board and the campuses, what the two colleges and the School of Continuing Ed want to accomplish. I think this is also where some of my facilitation and planning skills come in, because I have pretty much 20 years of experience of listening to different goals from different constituencies and trying to find the common themes and bringing those together. So I would see that as one of my primary goals. I would also want to be in communication with you on a regular basis. One of the things I've interviewed 4 other chancellors as I prepared for this job. One of the ideas that I like would be providing a weekly update. What's going on, what have I been doing, what's happening on the campuses, what's important to community members, what am I hearing, progress towards goals, those types of things I think would be important. I think also regular meetings with the board president and then periodic meetings with each of the other board members to make sure that I understand what's important to you, where you're coming from, and if I'm meeting your expectations. And that's the last thing I would say, is that I do believe in actually accomplishing results and communicating those results and sharing those with you and with the campuses. I think that's one of the ways to earn trust. Between open communication and honesty and actually achieving results, those are 2 of the things that have worked well for me in terms of earning trust and credibility.
Other questions? Yes.
Good morning, Dr. Marshall.
Good morning.
I'm Dennis Savino. I'm the interim dean of instruction and student services for the School of Continuing Education, the Cyber Center here on this campus. The School of Continuing Ed is a very large standalone non-credit component of the district. And last year we served over 35,000 students. How do you envision the role of non-credit in a large comprehensive district like ours?
I think that's another thing that is really appealing to me about this district is the large non-credit program. I think non-credit programs serve students that might not otherwise be served. They're not quite ready, either family-wise or skill-wise, to enter into a credit program. So I think a non-credit program that provides both basic skills and developmental courses to get ready for college, and then short-term certificates, so that if I need to go to work, I can do that. If I need that to support my family, and then maybe I can re-enter an educational pathway sometime in the future. I think a non-credit program is essential, really, to the work that we do because of the population that we serve, and because that we want to give everybody a leg up and help them be successful. I don't ever want to give up on the dream of every single student achieving his or her goals. That's what's most important. And the non-credit program, because it can be short-term, responsive, and flexible, and prepare students for the next step, is critical to what we do as community colleges. I would like to see all of us, all non-credit programs and credit programs, collaborate better, do a better job of getting whichever of those students who are in non-credit programs, if they would like to continue into a credit program, into a traditional program, I'd love to see us build stronger, streamlined pathways from non-credit programs or even fee-based programs into credit programs. And that's another aspect, is your fee-based programs, which, you know, it's kind of sad that the community colleges, because of the budget cuts, have had to move away a little bit from lifelong learning. You've been able to maintain that here, and I think that's wonderful, that you're meeting lifelong learning needs, because I think that's part of what appeals to me also of being an educator. I want to empower people to be learners, because most of us, I think all of us know that you can't just get in a job or stay static in life. you have to keep learning and growing. Our jobs demand it, the fields demand it, and so non-credit and contract education fit into that as well. You're welcome.
Rob Luke, I work here at Davis College, plant facilities, CSE president. If I were to talk to classified employees in your college, how would they describe your experience?
I have a very positive relationship with the classified Senate leadership and with CSEA leadership. One of the things that I've intentionally done is to include classified in decision making. One of the changes that we made about 3.5 years ago was to make sure that there was classified representation on our committees. And when we have a gap, when we don't have classified on committees, then we go recruit. The classified Senate president and I, sometimes we make individual calls and ask people to participate on committees. As a manager, I can also respond when people say, well, my boss won't let me go. Then it's my job to talk to the manager and say, can we work something out where you still provide high levels of service, but we need this person on this committee. I've also sponsored them in leadership development, so they've attended much of the classified Senate leadership retreats. They go on an annual basis, and we even just hosted the Southern Leadership Retreat for the classified Senate on our campus. So I think classified staff are critical to what we do because oftentimes they're on the front line. And some students will even connect with a classified staff member over a faculty member, and certainly over a manager. So I think classified staff are essential to the work that we do because of the service they provide, being on the front line, dealing with students, dealing sometimes with difficult situations. I think their voice is valued and it's necessary in the work that we do. Good morning.
Good morning. I'm Adam Gottlieb. I'm the academic senate president for the School of Continuing Education. And I'm going to do a follow-up question to what Dennis asked. I would love your response. I would like to hear more. You shared that you like the idea of where possible identifying students who want to move from non-credit to credit. I love that idea. And I wonder if there are either ideas or examples that you might be able to share with us about how you might promote that in our district.
I think two things come to mind. You have some great career technical pathways. And so I think together we want to look at which of those pathways, and it's still something off the top of my head, maybe that culinary pathway is one of them, maybe some of the healthcare or technical pathways. But we want to have some conversation about which of those pathways lend themselves, because of the careers along that pathway, to having a non-credit component and then going into a credit program. So I think that's one, is the curricular pathway. Do we have that fully developed and scaffolded in such a way where I can take a certificate and then maybe take another certificate and add on to that and maybe get into the credit program? I think that's one answer. The other answer is having what I call a warm handoff. So do we have support services in place that help students if they're making that transition from either an adult education situation or a non-credit situation to learn to navigate our incredibly complicated system. And that's just the way it is. We're a public entity, but I think things like counseling support, tutoring support, perhaps financial aid support. How do I fill out a FAFSA? What does that mean? In our adult ed regional consortium, we've even talked about the fact that sometimes adult ed students will make that transition and they'll go to the college and they can't even figure out where to park and where to go. So two of the solutions that we've looked at for that is to perhaps have college classes on off-site locations, either at a high school or another community center, so that they get used to taking a college class, and then maybe you have an orientation or a summer boot camp or something that prepares them to navigate a college campus and all of the systems that we have in place. So those are two things that I'd like to work on.
Tracy.
Okay. So you mentioned external partnerships. Can you give some examples of similar partnerships?
Yes.
Thank you.
Did everybody get the question?
The question was about external partnerships. So I'll mention a few. On the K-12 side of the house, I've worked with two of our local largest feeder districts, Ukiah, Calamasa Joint Unified and Redlands Unified. And we've been doing dual enrollment programs. We also have linked learning pathways, so for our STEM programs, and we're getting ready to enhance and build up our public safety pathway. So those have been great programs that we've done with our local partners. With UKIPA, we've even gotten to the point where we do joint strategic planning sessions. So my senior managers get together with their senior managers, and we talk about work that we can do together to help students in UKIPA and Calamasa transition to college, whether it's Crafton or somewhere else. But there's a very low college going rate in the Inland Empire, and we want to do something about that. With our four-year partners, again, we've worked on, through our transfer center, making it easier for students to get into four-year programs. We have lots of articulation agreements. And we are currently hosting Brandon University on our campus so that students who can't leave the area but want to pursue a four-year degree have an opportunity to stay right there in the community and get their bachelor's degree if they so choose. And that was another reason we applied for the baccalaureate program. We were selected, but then we went on warning, so we were we were in essence kicked out. But those are the kinds of things that I think we've done with educational partners. In the community side, I have a great partnership with the city of UKIPA. We have done some joint facilities planning. They purchased an Olympic training pool, and we house that on our campus. They did an overflow parking lot for me, and in the future, we hope to have a regional training center there that would be a joint project. And we are looking at, right across from the campus, what we're calling a college village. So a development that would have some potential student housing, a training and education center, and they would house their small business incubator there. So by being out in the community and working with external partners, it helps the community, but it also helps students from the K-12 on up. That can't be all of them.
Leroy Mills, community member since 1976, member of city council and mayor. Recently, several colleges have been used, University of Missouri, Yale, and Oklahoma University. There were a small group of students that were causing unrest, even to the point of calling for presidents to resign. So my question is, how would you deal with such unrest on college campuses?
Well, a few things come to mind. One, I would want to have a conversation directly with the students to find out what their concerns are. What is the cause of the unrest? Why are they unhappy? Why are they dissatisfied with the president or the college or whatever is going on? I think that would be helpful to have that direct face-to-face conversation. I also think we need to get down and dig into what the problem is. What is the real issue? And what are the different perspectives on that issue? So after talking to the students, I would also want to talk to members of the community, to members of the district, to members of the campus, and to see how different people see the issue and see if there's something that we could do to solve it or make it better.
I have a different question. The cost for education is very expensive. So what would you do to reduce the cost to students? And particularly what I've read in the paper is that the administrative costs are enormous. I've read where top executives make $400,000 to $600,000. And I'm a retired veteran. General Eisenhower with 5 stars commanded all the forces of World War II. Did not earn that much money. So what would you do to reduce the cost of education for students?
In my experience, the greatest cost to students at the community colleges is not the tuition, it's $46 a unit. It's the books and the living expenses. And that's where our students need the most help. They can usually, come up with the money to pay the tuition. It's all the other expenses that go with it, and perhaps reducing their work hours that they struggle with. Two of the things that I've been involved with and on the CEO board, and it's in the governor's budget right now, is to expand Cal Grants. If we can expand Cal Grants, especially Cal Grant B, because that's the part that covers living expenses and books, that would be of a great benefit to our students. We also need to make sure that the Higher Ed Act gets reauthorized so that they have access to Pell Grants and other kinds of federal aid. I would love to see increased benefits to veterans. There's been a good focus on veterans recently, and we can always do more to serve that population and to make sure that they have the support services and the financial support that they need to do that. The other piece that comes about in terms of teaching is the move towards open educational resources. That's a possible way to reduce the cost of books because there are free books, free materials available, and if a student has a smart device, they can access those materials. So we would need to work with faculty to see who would be interested in using those kinds of materials in their classes. There will be a grant from the state to do that, and I think that's another great innovation that could really impact our students. I mean, books are sometimes $1,000 a semester. So I'm paying, $300 to take my classes, and then I'm paying $1,000 or more for my books. Another thing we've just implemented at Crafton is a rental program. So I think there are structural things we can do within the district that would address some of the high costs. I think there are things we can do at the state and federal level to continue to advocate for increased benefits that are related to education. And then I think there are things we can do through the foundation as well. I think increasing the number of scholarships, building up endowed scholarships so that students have additional access to the kinds of funds that they need in order to be able to perhaps reduce the hours that they work and be able to attend hopefully full-time or at least 12 units a semester. You're welcome.
Is he having somebody here?
Yeah, good morning, Dr. Marshall.
Good morning.
Paul Dios, Student Council, People Development, and Admission of Records. That's at college. From your perspective, what are some of the benefits and challenges working with subsequent community perspective as Chancellor, working in multi-community colleges?
Well, I think that when you have multiple sites and you have 3 main campuses and then even some satellite locations, you can serve the community better. You can serve that little portion of the service area because Cypress College and Fullerton College and the School of Continuing Ed have different populations that they serve. And I think that's part of where the unique identity and the unique campus culture comes from. I think that's part of the community and community college is how do we serve the needs of our immediate neighbors and community wherever we're located. So, and then there can be some healthy competition. We have to manage that and make sure that it doesn't get to destructive competition. But there's nothing wrong with healthy competition, especially when it relates to student success or fundraising or partnership development. Those are things that are okay to compete on.
Good morning.
Good morning.
My name is Jessica Creed. I'm the Special Projects Director for the Adult Education Block Grant. And I was just curious, what are your thoughts on the recent state developments in adult education and the opportunities that it provides for our students, specifically in a multi-college district?
I think the adult education work is some of the most exciting work that's going on right now. And it goes back to what I said about having some streamlined pathways. So the fact that, if I understood it correctly, you're doing some work with Anaheim Union and some of the local school districts. The role of adult education and non-credit, again, help fill some of those gaps that we don't do in a traditional setting. Whether it's college preparatory type skill building or career skill building. So I think, and again, it goes back to my experience that when you work together as a region and you break down those silos, that we eliminate duplication of services, we have synergy, we each can do what we do best and not have to do everything for everyone. So I think the combination of a great adult ed regional consortium and a non-credit program, it's really going to open up opportunities for folks that, again, may not be ready or able to attend a traditional setting. I'm always concerned about the funding for this. I'm hoping that community colleges remain part of the funding so that we can continue to support the regional consortia work that is going on across the state. In our regional consortia, again, the experience that I've had is that it gets all the players in the room. You have the K-12 leaders, you have the community college leaders, and so it allows us to, again, do some joint problem solving, talk about specific pathways that we want to develop, talk about ways to encourage students to move from an adult education program into either a non-credit or a credit program or somewhere along that pathway.
Other questions?
Good morning, morning, Dr. Marshall.
Good morning, Kai.
As you know, the district has recently passed a $574 million bond. Can you talk about your experience opening facilities?
That's another very exciting aspect and a desire that I have to come and work here. Excuse me. I've just lived construction for the last 7.5 years. We had passed a bond in the San Bernardino district. And so I've been all the way through the entire process, from facilities master planning to designing the buildings, to doing what we call value engineering, which means reducing the budget, deciding what you can cut out of a building, then constructing it, dealing with issues that come up along the way. We've had a couple of firms go out of business, and so you have to figure out how to shift gears in the middle of a project. And then the move-in. How do you mobilize and serve people and make it as easy as you can to move faculty and staff to a new location? We've moved 90% of our campus in the last couple of years. So it's been a major project. We just opened 4 new buildings in the last year, and we had our grand opening for 3 of those buildings last Friday. So I've seen the whole process from beginning to end. I have lots of lessons learned. The other aspect of this that I encourage you to think about, wherever your next chancellor is that when you're designing buildings and you're entering into a major bond project program, it really allows you to think about, who do we want to be as educators? Who do we want to become? Where are we going in the next 10 years, the next 20 years? And we know more about learning now than we've ever known before. We know more about student support and how that works and what best practices are. So the question then becomes, how do we design facilities that support the work that we want to do? How do we support student engagement? How do we build in gathering areas? How do we create classrooms that are cutting edge and that might enable faculty who desire to do so to do a flipped classroom? So you have to build in the technology infrastructure for that. Those are all questions that you can ask along the way. And again, I've got 7.5 years of experience on that. So it's a wonderful process because it not only allows us to have that visioning, but it also allows us to transform physically and systematically who we want to be and what we want to do, how we want to educate.
Yes, ma'am. Cheryl Smith, Director of Campus Safety, Cypress. Besides accreditation, ma'am, what other challenges have you had at Crafton Hills College?
Well, at Crafton Hills College,
Everybody got the question? Everybody could hear the question?
the question was about other challenges besides accreditation that I faced. One of the major challenges coming from a small college is to have a balanced budget. How do we do our work and grow to the point where we can be self-sustaining? Our goal right now is to get to about 5,500 FTEs, because then we can have a balanced budget. So it's taken me to be an advocate on behalf of Crafton to help us to move forward. Even the building of new buildings. How do we fill those buildings and how do we support and maintain those buildings operationally when we don't have quite enough FTEs to support our budget? I've had to do this, I've tried to do it diplomatically, but it also required for me to stand up for what I believed was right. And to work collegially with our sister campus, because it was a threat. It was perceived as a threat. Why should we grow Crafton when Valley needs to grow? That was the nature of the conversation, and we had to attack that in a very professional and positive way and maintain relationships so that it didn't damage the relationships between the two colleges. So I think that's been another major challenge that I faced at Crafton, is how do you grow a college in a financially responsible way where you can still serve the community and do the work that you need to do. And let me add one more thing. The results are, in 1 year we grew 18%, last year we grew 6%, and this year we're going to probably grow 5%. So it's required enrollment management and really thinking through that to make sure that we maintain our services and that we schedule in a way and provide the right classes for students to take.
Some water for you. Sorry,
Thank you.
I apologize for that. Other questions? Yes, ma'am.
Good morning, Dr. Marshall. I'm
Good morning.
Marius. I'm the director of our design and printing department for the district offices. As a female in a high-level leadership position, how do you achieve a successful work-life balance?
Well. There are times that I have not succeeded at that. I have learned the hard way though, that in a high-level role that takes a lot of energy and 50 to 60 hours a week, I have to have those times where I can refresh and re-energize. One of the things that I've learned to do is to take trips periodically, and even if it's a short trip, just a weekend, just get away. I was sharing with the Chancellor staff yesterday, I love to go to the beach. I love sitting by the ocean, walking by the ocean, and so I have to find those things that are re-energized and help keep me focused on the things that are important in life. Also spending time with my family. I have two mostly grown children, but it's wonderful now that they're both out of the house to spend time with them. Again, it's a great reminder of what's the most important things are in life. I also enjoy a little retail therapy every once in a while. So a nice shopping trip with the girls or girls' night out. Those are the things, you have to find those things that keep you not only centered and focused on what's most important, but re-energize you as well. So those are the little things that I've done. And I have learned that the hard way because I have gotten to the point at certain times in my career where I didn't even use all my vacation days and I started losing them. I've tried to change that so that I don't burn out.
It's a system and is a priority to increase our faculty and staff diversity. Can you share your experience with that?
Yes, I think you have to be very intentional about that. We have a great opportunity right now with the amount of hiring going on. And I think it starts with the outreach. You have to be intentional in the kinds of schools that you reach out to, the portions of the community that you reach out to. One of the strategies that we've used at Crafton is to contact graduate programs in the area and to recruit graduate students. And we have a policy in place where we can take interns. If someone has completed half of their master's degree, they can come in and teach for us. It's a great way to have young, fresh students who look like the students we serve come in and start to develop their skills as faculty members. So I think that outreach piece is important, and then you have to look at your selection process. Have you built in questions that truly reflect sensitivity to diversity and truly reflect being a role model and serving students who might be first-generation college students, who maybe have never experienced being on a college campus. They don't have that family support, and so we need faculty and staff who look like and understand the culture and understand the backgrounds of students and how to support them through that process. So one of the things that I've done as president at the second level interview, when I'm interviewing finalists, I ask specific questions that give me a sense of that person's ability to serve as a role model. Are they focused on student success? How do they view students? How have they dealt with difficult students? What kinds of things have they put in place in their classroom to help students succeed? And the answers are very revealing because it does tell you somebody's perspective on students and whether they see them through an asset lens or through a deficit lens. So those are things that I look for in the second level interview. And I'm happy to report that we've been able to increase the people of color on our campus. We have more Latino and African American staff and faculty members than we've ever had in the history of the college. And I was saying yesterday, I think these two things could go together. The fact that we had HSI grants and that we were intentional about our hiring, we've doubled the number of Latino students at Crafton. It was barely over 25% 8 years ago, and now we're at 50%. So you have to build a campus culture, and that means hiring the right people to have a welcoming community that embraces every student. I'll stop there.
Mark Posner, the Director of Campus Communication. You mentioned earlier the achievement gap. I'm wondering if you'd share some specifics in addressing those issues.
Well, I think this is one of the things that's great about the equity funding is that it's forced us to drill down. It's forced us to disaggregate our data, to take a look at who is not succeeding, who's not completing, who is not making it to the finish line, who are students that are seeking out through some of the points. So specifically, and if I remember at Cypress correctly, at some of your Hispanic students, students with disabilities, and I think Asian and Pacific Islanders. But whatever the case, once you identify who is being disproportionately impacted, in other words, they're not making it through our system, Then you have to look at what kinds of programs and services can we put in place that specifically address that target audience. Males is another one, especially young men of color. We have to do things to support men, young men, who maybe, again, don't have the cultural or family support to make it through school. I think our first generation college students who are trying to navigate the complicated system, those are students that we have to address. So I think we have to really be honest with ourselves in terms of looking at the data and seeing what that tells us about which students are making it and which are not. Two other things that I think we can do to support our students is to have those, what I've heard called courageous conversations. We have to be able to have honest conversations about why students, whoever they are and whatever their issues are in terms of making it through school, how can we address that? And sometimes, again, that has to do with having a welcoming environment for every single student. No matter what they look like, where they're from, what their age is, and that's another group, is, sometimes returning students struggle with getting back into college. So whoever it is, what do we need to do to support them and make them feel welcome and to help them make it through the process? The other thing that I think we all have to challenge ourselves on, I've heard some wonderful presentations on what we call implicit bias. So what are the biases that we have in our own mind that we might not even be aware of? And there's some wonderful trainings going on across the state to help all of us identify biases that we may have and then retrain our brain to overcome those. So those, I think, are things that we have to do as community college professionals so that we can address the achievement gap and students who aren't making it through.
Thank you, Dr. Marshall.
Time for one more question. Sure, go ahead.
Oh, good.
So you just said something about training. So what are your thoughts about professional development for administrators, classified staff?
I think for administrators, there's two key components. One is kind of the operational things that we need to know. So how our system works, what is an FTE and how does that produce funding? What are the special types of funding that we need? So all those kind of operational management duties that we have. I think the other piece is leadership development. We have a terrible time within our system finding good candidates for management positions. And so I think leadership development is critical for managers. For classified staff, I think growing within whatever their technical area is, how do we embark technical skills that will help them be great at their job? And then things like customer service, student support, understanding their role in supporting students. For faculty, I think it's about innovative teaching methods. Again, how do we address the achievement gap? How do I do something like a flipped classroom? How do I do something like a learning community? And what does that really require? And then I think we could also hopefully fund outside conferences for them to maintain their technical proficiency, whatever their area is.
Well, I stated for the last question, but we can just squeeze in one last question.
Great, thank you. My name is Jennifer Perez. I'm the Director of Campus Communications at the School of Continuing Education, and I was just wanted to hear what your priorities are when it comes to emergency preparation and incident management, including training drills and even the concept of armed campus safety officers.
I think it starts with a good safety plan and having multiple people put that plan together, make sure that it makes sense and that it addresses as many details as we can. Keeping that plan up to date, so if I'm a building captain or I'm an incident command center person, I know what that role is, and I keep current on what that role and responsibility is. And then I think you have to have experiential exercises on that, whether it's tabletop exercises or in October when we do the great shakeout, we have to keep practice of those and actually evacuate buildings and actually have, I think the more realistic we can make it, the better off we all are. And doing those probably a couple of times a year, at least once a year, so that it stays fresh in our mind. And then on the operational side, I would say that we also need to make sure that we have the supplies in place that we need. Because I think if something does happen, community college campuses and sites are probably going to be areas where we need to serve the community and help to deal with whatever the situation is. So those are my thoughts.
Well, that concludes our question and answer part of the session. At this point of time, I would invite Dr. Marshall for your closing comments. Okay.
I want to thank you again for being here, for taking the time to listen to me. I hope you can tell that I love what I do, that I love being a community college educator. I think I bring a broad perspective. I love partnership development and being out in the community. And I lead with honesty and transparency. I value people. I think people are the most important part of an organization. As wonderful as new buildings are, it's people that make it work. It's people that connect with our students and that connect with each other. And that's the way that I like to lead. So thank you. I would love to be your chancellor.
Next session will begin at 10 o'clock. There's a restroom on the side, on this floor, water fountain also.